This morning, Jesus poses to us arguably the most important question that we can answer. Who do you say I am? This is the question that he asks of Peter and the disciples. But you, who do you say I am? It is the most central question in so many ways because we call ourselves Christians, Christians. We are followers of Christ. So who Christ is to you, who he is to me, is the most central question for our faith. There may be many other things that we can debate about and talk about and learn about and be interested in, all of which are valid and meaningful. But the most central question is, who is Christ to you? Our reading today continues in Matthew, and we're in chapter 16 and reading from verses 13 to 17, or actually to 16. The lectionary takes us all the way up to verse 20. These 8 verses in Matthew chapter 16 are the most written about verses by commentators and Bible scholars in the entire book of Matthew. It is in this passage, these short 8 verses, that we're confronted with who Christ is. We're told that Peter will be the rock on which the church is built. And we learn for the only time in Matthew's gospel about the keys to the kingdom of heaven. And these 3 ideas have absolutely captivated scholars over the year. But this morning we don't want to go into all of the scholarship of this. We really want to answer that existential, relational question, the question about identity that Jesus presents to us. Who do you say I am? And as you're listening or watching this message, I really encourage you to let your thoughts roam and even barely listen to my voice, but use the next few minutes to think for yourself, who is Jesus to you? Who is he to you? How do you make sense of him? What is your relationship with him? It is the most central question in our faith, because it is out of our experience and knowledge of Christ that everything else evolves. We build our theology on him. We build our understanding and our experience of God on him. We build our understanding of ourselves and of our own anthropology, our own humanity, on him. We build our understanding of other people, of those in the church, of those in the world, of those who are seeking Christ, of those who are lost, of those who are suffering, on Christ. We build our understanding of our history and of our future on Christ. Who is he to you? At the beginning of this passage, Jesus asks the disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? And he's quite clear in that way because he depersonalizes. He doesn't say, who do you say? He says, who do people say I am? Just people out there. What do they say? And actually, that's a technique that we use quite often in social work and in counseling and in different fields, to just say, well, some people might experience this, rather than saying, you experience this. It sort of takes it away and puts it into the realm of the general. And the disciples reply and they say, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. Now all of these people that are listed here, John, Elijah, Jeremiah, and then one of the other prophets, are all prophets. They're all teachers. They're all people who point the way to God. And of course Jesus does this. He does point us towards God. And in a sense, I guess he is a prophet because he speaks the truth to us. He reveals truth to us, which is really what prophets do. I think sometimes we think of prophets as telling the future, and sometimes that is what they do. But primarily what they do is that they reveal God's truth to us. That's the prophetic ministry, is to reveal the truth of God to us. And Jesus does that. So in some ways, it's not wrong for us to say that Jesus is a prophet. But that's kind of where they stop. So it's not wrong what they say. They just don't quite go far enough. And so as you're thinking about who Jesus is to you, perhaps you're thinking things, well, let me tell you what I was thinking this morning. I was thinking he's my friend. He's my brother. He feels like a brother to me. He feels like somebody that I can utterly depend on, that I can trust completely, that I can really, really let go, which is something for me personally that's not that easy to do. But with him, I feel like I can really let go with him. I thought of words like counselor and comforter and healer and whole maker, as in W-H-O-L-E, whole, someone who makes me whole, who completes me and fills me. I thought of him as a teacher, for sure. I thought of him as an example, as somebody that I desire to emulate and try to emulate. I was thinking about all of these things as I was mulling over for myself this morning again while I was lying in bed. All of who is Jesus to me. And maybe that's true for you too. But what we learn from this passage is that as true as all of those things are, Jesus is more. He is more than all of that. And so the people that Jesus asks about have just not gone far enough in understanding who Christ is. Now, it's interesting that this is the only place in Matthew's Gospel that Jesus actually talks about himself in this kind of way, and where he invites his disciples to talk about his identity. Jesus is really doing identity work here, together with his disciples, and it's the only place where he does this. Now, in Matthew's Gospel, there are 28 chapters, and this takes place in the 16th chapter, which is past the halfway mark, right? It's in the second half of the Gospel that Jesus finally comes to the place where he says, "Who do you say I am? And who do people say I am? But most importantly, who do you say I am?" It's in the second half of the Gospel that Jesus raises this question. He has been journeying with his disciples for half of the story, and only now does he ask them, "Who am I to you?" And I thought this was interesting because very often as Christians, and particularly evangelical Christians, we have an expectation that at the point of conversion, when I make that commitment to Christ, I need to be able to say, "I believe that you are Christ, the Son of God, that you are the Messiah," that I need to be able to make these statements of faith about who Christ is before I can become a Christian. But what we read here in Matthew is in fact that the understanding of who Christ is comes much later. There's a message here for us about the growth of faith. Jesus walks with his disciples and builds relationships with them, and they see him at work. They see him perform miracles, and they hear his teaching. They see his example as he lives his life, and they witness the way that he engages with both those who need him, those, for example, who are ill, as well as those who are out to harm him, particularly the religious leaders of his time. And it is in response to all of this witnessing that Peter finally is able to recognize that Jesus is the Christ. The understanding of who Jesus is not the prerequisite for faith. It is the result of faith. That's what we're learning from this passage in Matthew 16. It is through the journey of walking with Jesus that insight is derived about who he is. I became a Christian in October 1984. I was 16 years old. I was in Standard 8. I had been going to church for quite a while. I was interested in faith, but I didn't really believe. And on that night, at an evening service, I felt the Holy Spirit. I didn't realize at the time it was the Holy Spirit, but I felt something moving in me, insisting that I come to God. And at the end of the service, I went to my minister and I said to him, I want to be a Christian. And I gave my life to God that evening. At that point, on that evening, I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know him. If somebody said, "Who do you say he is?" I would have said, I don't know. And if I had given an answer, it would have been purely one based on what I had heard, not based on my experience. But as I journeyed from that point forward in 1984 until today, with all of the ups and the downs of one's faith and life, now, all of these many years later, I can look back and I can say, I have an answer. Our understanding of Christ is the fruit of our journey with him, not the prerequisite for our journey. Jesus saved me on that night in October, even though I really didn't know him at that time, even though I didn't really understand him at that time. But he called me and I responded to him in faith and ignorance. And he has taught me since then, as he has related to me about who he is. It's interesting that this comes up so late in the gospel and not at the beginning. Peter's answer, based on all of this experience of walking with Jesus, being taught by him, being part of that inner circle, his experience of the transfiguration, all of these things, his walking on water, which happened just 2 chapters before, all of these things lead him to recognize who Christ is, and he says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." That "you are" is, in the Greek, it is so definitive. It is emphasized that you are. He believes that he knows this to be true. It's not even just like a conceptual or an intellectual thing. He knows who Jesus is. You are. There's no, I think maybe you might be, or my feeling is, there's an absolute certainty in his mind about the person of Christ. And in the Greek, it's also a little bit interesting. The NIV translates, "You are the Son of the living God." But in the Greek, it is, "You are the Son of God, the living one." You are the Son of God, of the living one. It is emphasizing the Son of God, the Son of the living God, that one who is alive. Because, of course, in those days, like today, there are many gods. Which God are we speaking about? And so Peter qualifies, you are the Son of God. You are the Son of the living God, the living one. That Son, that God, this is who you are. And so for Peter, there is just one Messiah. For me, there is just one Messiah. We can have another conversation about what happens to everybody else. But for me personally, Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, the Son of the living one. It is important for us to pull into our understanding of who Christ is, along with teacher and friend and counselor and supporter, all of those things that are absolutely true. It's important to pull into that mix this foundation that he is the Christ. He is the Messiah, the anointed one. He is God the Son. He is the Son of God. He is part of the triune Godhead. And he is the Son of the living one, who was alive yesterday, who is alive today, and will be alive in the future. So, dear friends, let's answer Jesus' question. But you, what about you? Who do you say I am?